So yes, then there's needs-based, where you're basically understanding your client's needs. Okay, that's very, very important in the questioning process. So we talked about how important questioning is. Okay, because you will not sell well if you can't question. And as business owners, you really need to do that. And it's something we don't do enough. We then went into listening, which I said is arguably the most important skill when it comes to sales. And again, we spoke about the different types of listening. Again, does anybody want to see if they can jog their memories and just mention a couple, either in the chat or unmute and say that?
Yeah, there was informational, fact-based listening. There was active listening, where we're kind of acknowledging, nodding and saying yes, and oh, that's interesting, kind of acknowledging, showing the other party that we have been listening. And then the most powerful, I suppose, is heart-based, empathic, open, non-assumptive, non-judgmental listening. Easy to say, but much harder to do.
You know what, Scott, you couldn't have put it better. Like, that was a very, very good summary, and that's exactly right. So we just spoke about the importance of listening, and the importance of really, really not just listening to respond, but listening to understand, and how powerful that can become in sales. Because if your client or the person in front of you really feels that, they're going to feel a much stronger connection. They're going to know, like, and trust you better, and you're more likely to make the sale. We then looked at the importance of features, advantage, and benefits. So basically selling through benefits. A lot of us will just talk about features and we don't go into the benefits enough. And then we looked at a couple of sales strategies, which was spin, which is one of them you mentioned, the other being challenger. And through research, challenger sales people or challenger sales business owners tend to outsell everyone else because they teach their client something, they tailor their conversation to that client and their needs, and they take control of the sales conversation. So look, without further ado, let's go into what we're going to cover today. So, a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so today we're going to start off by looking at objection handling. Because when you're in sales, as a business owners, I keep saying you are salespeople, whether you like it or not, part of you are. You're going to have people having objections. The first thing I will say is objections or facing objections shouldn't be scary. It's actually a really good sign. Because just think about it, right? If somebody's interested in your product or service, they're likely to have an objection. They're likely to say something, right? It's the people who go, no, everything's fine. Right? They have no questions, they have no objections, and they'll say they will get back to you, and you never hear from them again. They just weren't interested at all. So I always say when you get an objection, it's actually a very good sign. Okay? And there are lots of different objections you can get. You can get price, you can get I haven't got enough time, now's not the right time. I mean, there's so many. I'm sure you all come across them. And again, objection handling, like most of sales, comes from a mindset as well. But the first thing is when you get an objection, and I've seen people do this, is they'll start disagreeing. And you must have heard of a very famous saying which says the customer's always right. So whenever you get an objection, firstly, always empathize, sympathize, and agree with the customer. Or show that you're listening to them. Don't go straight into a mode where you are just objecting to what they're saying, because that turns into an argument. Just say, I understand how you might feel that way. However, etc., etc. Or I've done it before where I said to a client, if I was in your position, I'd feel the same way, which I genuinely would have. However, the reason why I would still act upon this, and I had the reasons why, and I'm going to go a bit more into that now. Another very, very powerful way of doing this as well is the feel, felt, found technique. If somebody gives you an objection, right, in any case, in any sense, you just start a very simple technique, which is, I understand how you feel. I would have, or I know other clients felt the same way, but what they found by working with me or using our service is X, Y, and Z. Really simple example. If somebody says, you're too expensive, I understand how you feel. Most clients, when I first gave them a price, they said the same thing. However, what they found is when they started working with me, the return on investment they got dwarfed what they spent. And therefore, it wasn't actually expensive at all. Giving you a very obvious, easy example there. That just gives you a bit of it's a very, very good it's a very simple way. It's a very, very simple and effective way where you're empathizing, you're showing you're listening. You're not saying to someone, no, you're stupid for thinking I'm expensive, or you're wrong, but you're just giving them the context to how other people felt with that, but actually benefit of why they still went ahead, depending on that objection. The other very key thing to do is isolating your objections. This is a very, very key thing. Sally, you're right. Expensive is different for everyone. Value is key. Exactly. So the thing is, people tend to say very general statements, and a lot of the time, you're going to find a common theme with what I'm going through, and it's really about being present and listening to people and showing you are, and really peeling away layers. Yesterday, I spoke about questioning, level 1, level 2, level 3 questioning, about peeling away the layers. So it's the same when even somebody gives you an objection. Isolate the objection. So if somebody says to you, for example, well, you're too expensive. My first question is, expensive compared to what? Who are you making that assumption? What is making you say it's too expensive? What are you comparing it against? Like, it's a genuine question. It's not some sort of trick question you're trying to give the client. Like, I literally say, like, what are you comparing? Why do you say that? Okay? You want to isolate. You want to take out whatever the objection they're giving. You want to pick it apart a little bit. Okay? If they say, oh, now's not the right time. Okay. Oh, sorry. A better one. If they just say, oh, I'm not quite sure at the moment. I mean, a very simple one. Isolate. Say, what exactly you're not sure about? Maybe I can help. Maybe I can help you get some more clarity. And then they might turn around and go, well, actually, it's the price, or actually, it's the timing, or actually, I need to speak to my business partner, or my wife, or my girlfriend, or my husband, or whatever it is. But a lot of the time, it's really simple, but you'll be surprised how many people don't isolate the objection, try to take it out, draw it out, and drill down on it. Because usually another thing you'll find is the objection isn't really the objection. When people are giving you an objection, there's actually a reason behind that. People try to be polite. Sometimes people don't even realize what that reason behind it was, and they'll just give the first answer that comes to them. Oh, I haven't got time right now. So just another effective way is isolating the objection. Really powerful though, revert back to their needs, their problems and goals. And this is why I say sales, the conversation is so important. A lot of the time through your questioning, your listening and your rapport building, you can actually handle a lot of objections before they come out. But let's say it does come out. Let's say, I'll give you an example with my own coaching. I've been speaking to a client and they're telling me about why they need to have sales, how it's keeping them up at night, how their business isn't where it wants to be, how they need their own personal income to increase from their business so they can pay for their son or daughter's private school, whatever it is, or their new car, or whatever it is. Okay, they're giving me all these problems. They're giving me the aspirations where they want to get it to. We want to take our business from 500,000 to 2 million in the next 2 years. They've said all these things throughout the conversation. And then I'm now giving my proposal. And let's just say, for example, they turn around and say, oh, that's too expensive. Again, I just very simply have to go back to all the things they've told me. I have to say, Mr. or Mrs. X, you just told me that your business isn't where it wants to be. You're finding it a challenge to convert your leads into actually paying clients. Right? You're telling me that you need to get your business to the next level because you're actually thinking of maybe even packing it all in. You're telling me you need that personal income to pay for X, Y, and Z. And now you're stalling over a few £1,000 or whatever it is. Just sometimes relaying all the conversation that the client has told you back to them will actually just make them think, actually, you know what? Yeah, you're kind of right. If you put it that way, I understand. Again, nothing I talk to you about is a silver bullet. These things are just meant to help that little bit more. And again, what a lot of people will say is, somebody might go, you're too expensive. And they just straight away go into the defense mode of, well, actually, I've got the best service in the world and I provide X, Y, and Z. And Joe Blogs down the road might be cheaper, but I'm better. You're getting into an argument. You're actually just trying to tell them what to do. Like I said yesterday or the day before, right? Selling isn't telling. Selling is questioning, listening, taking what the client's giving you and just giving it back to them. You have an objection. So revert back to their needs, problems, goals is a really powerful way of doing it. And like I said, it should have, in a way, already been answered through the sales process if you've asked really good questions, if you've gone deep, if you've listened well and you've explained about your product and service. Before I go any further, is there any questions or comments on that, or anything you want me to explain further? Again, feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat.
Yeah, I've got, sorry, I don't want to monopolize
No worries.
the interjection. What I find works quite well for me is, because often my sales conversations are about, I'm speaking to a head of learning and development in a law firm, and they want to commission some writing skills training. And so I get them to tell me what they're trying to achieve and why. But I find another really good question is, what's the cost to you of failing to achieve that? What's the cost to you personally and professionally, and to the team, of not your people's writing skills staying at the same level, not improving their writing skills, or not writing with impact? And that, I mean, several clients have said to me, well, it would be a disaster, in which case it's very hard for them to row back to say, well, it's too expensive, or, do you know what I mean?
Excellent. So that's a very, very good technique. And that's a bit about what we spoke about yesterday, where it was with the questioning and the level 1 and the level 2 and the level 3, which you're basically doing there, right? You're asking a level 3 question, which is, what is the impact for you personally? And like I said yesterday, people buy through emotion, they justify through logic. When you start getting those deeper questions, that's when you're able to really, really understand the emotional reasons for buying. And that's when, like you said, when an objection comes up, you can go back to them and sort of say, well, I mean, they'll probably realize themselves, but sometimes you have to be explicit and say, you just said to me earlier, X, Y, and Z. You just said this is the cost for you. That this cost, if you could even quantify it even better, especially in law firms. Law firms very much billable hour businesses, right? If you can turn around and say, look, we've just worked out this is costing you 400 grand a year, and I'm just making numbers up here, by the way, and I'm charging you 4 grand. I mean, in a way, it's a no-brainer. I'm giving you 100x return. So yeah, very, very good point, and a very good questioning as well, Scott. It shows an understanding of the possible client and starts to form a connection and then an emotional bond. That's right, Kate. Because sales is a step-by-step process. You show an understanding, you form a connection, and if you get a connection strong enough, like you said, it's an emotional bond. And you'll be surprised how quickly that can be. If you ask the right questions and listen attentively, you will get a connection with someone really quickly. It doesn't have to take weeks or months. It can even be in one session. Okay, so let me move on because I'm wary of time as well. The next is around pitching and storytelling. Okay, so everybody would have heard of having a sales pitch. And even though sales has changed a little bit now, I think, if we went back 30, 40 years ago, it was very much like stand up with a shiny suit, and basically give us your best pitch. And it's changed now, and one of the ways it's changed is become much more storytelling led, which I'll go on to in a minute. But I always think, and I've always found it's very been useful for me personally, but just to have what I call a 60-second elevator pitch, which is basically, if you were stuck with someone in an elevator and they said, what is it that you do? Tell me about your business. In under 60 seconds, it doesn't have to be 60, it could be 30. You can give an overview of what you do and why you do it and why it's important. Typically, it's what you do, how you do it, and the benefit of it, right? So something very quickly, and this is also a reflection of how you see your business personally. So sort of just off the cuff, something like from me, I'd say, I'm a sales coach. I transform people's lives. I predominantly work with business owners. I predominantly work with entrepreneurs, but I work with anyone who has to sell for a living. And what I found is that a lot of people have a wonderful product or service, but they haven't quite learned how to master the selling, and therefore they're not giving it justice and not living the lives they lead. So through webinars, workshops, individual one-to-one coaching, I help transform both their skill set and their mindset to ultimately help them get more sales revenues, attract more clients and help more people, and live the lives they want. Something along that line. There could be variations of that, but just something quickly, like everyone should be able to literally articulate a business in 60 seconds. And it's just something it's not the most critical part of sales, but it's something that can be really, really powerful if you have it. And the other thing is, it's also how you see your business. So I genuinely see my business or myself as someone who helps transform lives, because I genuinely believe as business owners, sales is critical to business for your own personal income, for your own revenue, but also if you can convert people into your clients, whatever your product or service it is, you're helping them and you're adding value to their life. So I see that ultimately through what I do is I'm transforming lives. And because I see that, I put that in my pitch. And it's not just something to sound fancy, it's I genuinely believe that. So with your sales pitches, whatever it is, really think about how are you seeing your pitches. Thanks, Gosia. I'm glad you found it a good pitch. But really, it's like, how do you see yourself? Like, genuinely see yourself. Like, how do you see your business? Because I hear lots of other sales coaches, and they'll say, yes, I'm a sales trainer. I go to those networking, BNI networking events, lots of different networking events. And sometimes I listen to people and I think, I know it's, I don't know you that well, but I'm thinking you're effectively, your opening pitch is not compelling me, because you just sound like there's no passion in it. And also it just sounds like you just think you're only a sales trainer or only a sales coach. But what does that actually mean? Next, obviously, this is the standard body language, tone of voice, how you dress and how you present yourself. And again, this really does make a difference to who you're speaking with, and you will adjust accordingly. But generally speaking, like, again, I'll be surprised by how when people talk, their body language can sometimes be really negative. Their tone of voice, very quiet, very low. This is, I don't want this to turn into teaching or sucking egg sessions, but just always remember that whenever you're presenting. I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's quite obvious. Again, how do you talk about your business? One of the things I'd like you to go away and think about is really think about what is your business there for on a deeper level. How do you see your business in this world? Do you just see yourself as only a branding agency, or only someone who can help develop writing, or only a coach, or only a property agent? Think about the words you're using. Think about what the end benefit is. How transformational do you think your business is? You might not do. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm just saying, think about the way you think about the business, because that will reflect on how you speak about it. But I wanted to touch on storytelling quickly, because storytelling is becoming increasingly important, both when you're doing social media selling, but even when you're just talking about your business. And if you think about it, it's almost made a comeback, because storytelling is one of the oldest forms of human communication. For thousands of years, people have been telling stories. And I think, especially with something like sales, we kind of went away from that. When people talk about their business, talked about, all the great bells and whistles their business has. But again, remember what I said, people buy through emotion. They justify it with logic, but they buy with it. Their purchasing decision ultimately comes down to emotion. If you can explain your business or explain what you're doing through a really powerful story, you're creating that emotional connection. And I'm not saying make up a story, right? I think a lot of the people I work with, actually, if you really think about your reason for going into business, it is actually quite a powerful reason. I've told my story a lot of times. There's almost two aspects to my story, which is I was at best an average salesperson, slightly struggling. And only when I really started working on my mindset and took control of that, then everything else started falling in place. And I became a really successful salesperson in my corporate career. But then I've always had this thing in me that I want to teach, I want to coach, and I want to help people as well as having this sort of business side to me. And I also saw that, especially in the corporate world, everything was just around skill set. Nothing was around mindset selling. And I saw in the business owners world, especially the private individual business owners, they might have worked on their mindset a lot, but they actually didn't have sales skills. So, I'll give you a very condensed version of my story. My story really came from my personal way I transformed myself, and then the frustrations I was seeing and the gaps that I was seeing, that I thought, actually, I could do something here that can really help people. And I'm good at it. I've got this skill. Why not use this skill that I've developed over the years? I've told you a very quick version of the story, but there's a story behind it. So again, if you're not already doing this, really start thinking about how you can make the story central, or certainly a big part of your selling process. Usually in my course, and I realize I'm talking a lot at you today. Like I said, the webinar has a little bit of that because of the time. Usually in my course, what we will do is we'll go and unpick some of these areas, and we'll really start unpicking it for you there and then. But today it's a little bit more, a tell session. But do think about this. Do go away and think about this. Just listen to Sally. She didn't start your story halfway through. So give people a shocking headline, which makes them sit up and take notice. Yeah, the headline captures them. The story creates the emotional bond. One of the things that create the emotional bond. So I just wanted to add this because I think it's something that we sometimes forget, or we do it without thinking about. But another very important thing is, and we mentioned it yesterday, I think it might actually be you, Sally, who said yesterday that it really makes a difference to who you're speaking with as to how you communicate. Absolutely. And one of the things with the challenger sales style we spoke about yesterday is the best salespeople are the best people in business who sell. They tailor to the person they're speaking with. So let's look at some of these personality types. So one is very common, it's matching and mirroring, right? Generally speaking, in any conversation, when you're trying to influence someone, if you're trying to get them to your way of thinking, matching and mirroring is a really powerful technique. However, I have seen people read this in books and do it really wrong. And I've seen people do it when I'm talking to them and I know what they're doing. And it's a bit cringy because it's too obvious, right? If I scratch my face, they scratch their face type of thing, right? And like, just have a bit of nuance when you do this. And one thing I always say is, if you are trying to mirror someone's body language, give a little bit of a gap. If they cross their legs, don't immediately cross your legs. Wait 20 seconds, right? Because it just, even if it's not consciously obvious, it'll subconsciously feel obvious. It'll feel a bit weird almost. So that's just a very simple thing. But I'm going to go more into matching and mirroring as I talk about some of these other areas. So introverted versus extroverted. Okay. Generally speaking, people fall in two types. I know they can cross over and meet both sides, but generally speaking, they do. And when you deal with an introverted, but if you've got a buyer in front of you and you've worked out introverted, the way you communicate with them should be different. Introverted people tend to, and again, this is the exact science, but they tend to be a lot more, well, a lot less gullible, right? They want more sort of hard facts. They want more sort of security around things. They don't want to talk too much. They have to be prized out of a conversation. They generally don't like being the center of attention. So just with some of these things, it's worth thinking about when you're selling this, when you're selling your product or service to them. So typically with an introverted person is they like to hear or listen to third-party recommendations because they want to hear about somebody else that's not you who's talking to them at that time, talking about your business, right? They'll want to have minimal pressure. I'm not saying most people don't want pressure, but especially introverted people. And they want a bit more intimacy. They want it to be a bit more personal, right? They tend to not want to, they're not going to make a buying decision in front of a group, right? They're going to want to go away and they're going to want to have a little bit more time to think about it, but they want to have that little bit more one-on-one conversation. Because they're more introverted, they're not going to pop up with their questions. You have to tease that out of them. Okay? And they're typically, when you just say, have you got any questions? They'll say, no, but actually they do. And that's why it's really important with the questioning, especially with introverted people. Extroverted people, though, a little bit different. They like to talk more, so let them talk more than you are. They like to be the center of attention. They like it when what you're talking about somehow reflects and shines them in a good light. It's not about being egotistical, you know. This is just how they get their energy. They get their energy from other people. They want to have a two-way conversation, and when they ask the question, they want you to shut up and let them talk. Generally speaking. The other thing with extroverted people is they tend to flip from topic to topic a little bit more. So you can ask them a more wider range of sales questions. Introverted people, they'd rather have 2 or 3 topics and just go deeper. So again, just things to think about. This isn't exact science, right? I know extroverted people are completely opposite this. I know introverted people are opposite this. I know people are somewhere in the middle. But it's just worth thinking about how you deal with them. But in the recent years, there's been other models that come up in psychometric testing. And one of them that I personally really like, I think is really accurate, is something called the DISC model. Has anybody heard of the DISC? Okay, put a yes in the comment box or just give a yes if you have. Oh, okay, some people. Oh, a few people have. Fantastic. Great. So let's quickly look at the DISC then, and also let's look at maybe how you deal with those DISC types. So the D is typically dominant people. Again, before I go any further, you end up being a little bit of everything, generally speaking. Okay, but this is what's your predominant style. So when you're dealing with a dominant person in this profiling, they tend to be bold, They tend to be skeptical. They're very results orientated. They generally seem to be impatient. They're very confident. They can be blunt. They can be outspoken. They can be demanding, and they can be competitive. And they can even come across as a little bit unsympathetic. Typically, this is your kind of CEO type. I'm not saying all CEOs are the same, but typically, okay, they're very much driven on results. They don't want to paddle around. They want to get straight to the point. There's a very good thing about selling to these people, though. They don't waste your time. And the best way to sell to these people is to mirror them. Be direct. Don't play with your words. Don't mince them. Just get straight to the point, within reason, of course. Okay. Talk to them in facts. Talk to them about achieving what is going to help them achieve. Okay. What it's going to give them. How it's going to help them get to their goals. They're not as bothered about building a relationship. So that's when people say sales are all about building a relationship. Building a relationship isn't what meaning speaking to them for hours and hours. That's a different type of person who likes that. Building a relationship with a dominant person is mirroring them. It's not out-dominating them, because then you're going to get into confrontation, but it's matching their style. It's being straight to the point. It's being straight to the facts. And it's giving them what the benefit of your product is going to do, or service is going to do, in terms of results. Next is the influencer. And they are bold, but they're more accepting. So they love persuading others. They're very social. They love social recognition. They love groups. They love taking action. Like the dominant, they also like taking action. They're very enthusiastic. They're very optimistic. And they love convincing. They're actually typically the stereotypical salesperson. Right? But they can come up in other careers. They can come up in other forms. Now, and they tend to be extroverts. So when selling to them, they love the idea. Do you remember yesterday, and even the day before, I said that people tend to buy through fear or greed or ego? Okay. The influencer is a little bit more towards the greed. And when I mean greed, it's the opportunity. They love the whole idea of, if you have this, imagine the possibilities are endless type of thing. So whatever your product service is, rather than talking about fear-based things, you tend to speak with the influencer about, if you sign up for my product or service, imagine what this is going to do for you. How this is going to give you X, Y, and Z. It's about opening up the world. And also, it's about giving them that social recognition, that if you have this, imagine what this is going to do for you socially. Imagine what this is going to do. You don't have to say those words, but it's them in their mind. They're building this image, because we all work in images, of them being recognized by everyone, them getting a well done from everyone, them taking action, being bold, trying something new and succeeding in it. So they've got some similar characteristics to the dominant person, but they're more interested in a bit more of a relationship, and they're more interested in, I want to have the glamour of this a little bit more. The third type is the steady, and they tend to be cautious and accepting. They tend to be very calm, deliberate. They love cooperation. These people love cooperation. They're very dependable. They definitely don't like being rushed. They love to support, and they love to maintain stability. So if you come across these sort of people, typically in a company, these would be the HR teams. Okay, not exact science, but typically. Now, if you ever got a client in front of you who you think fits this profile, okay, you don't want to rush them. Okay, and what you want to talk to them about is about how they don't want too much change. So you want to explain how your product service is letting them keep the status quo. It's just tweaking what they're already doing. You want them to feel comfortable that the decision they make isn't going to upset everyone else. So you want to start talking to them when you're selling to them. You want to explain how your product or service is going to keep harmony within their business or their partner or whoever else is with them. Okay, not change too much, but still give them the benefits they want. And they don't want drastic change. Like I said, they're slow and steady. And the other thing with them, you have to give them time. So with a dominant personality, you can say to them, because they value time, they don't mess around. You can mirror that. You can say, look, so when are we going to get the contract back? But they'll appreciate that. They'll appreciate your time urgency. Like, are we going to get it back next week? Because they're kind of pushy themselves, right? So they're actually going, okay, we get that. With someone who's steady, you want to talk about more the relationship side of things. Look, we've been speaking for the last couple of weeks, really value the relationship you built up, really value understanding your business. When do you think you're going to be ready to sign the contract? You're saying the same thing, but you're appealing to their more slower, steadier pace nature. Well, the dominant person will actually sometimes think, why is this person not asking me for the business? Again, not exact sciences, but it can help. And finally is the conscientious. Personally, I think is the hardest person to sell to. These people are really, really bogged down on detail. They really care about quality and accuracy, about expertise and competence. They're very detail oriented, and their biggest fear is being wrong, right? So with these sort of people, the reason why they can be really, really difficult to sell to is because they've got a little bit of the steady part of their personality where they don't like too much change. They want so much detail. They're the type of people that they'll pick up on the one thing you don't do well, or the one thing in your sales presentation that was wrong. They'll point that out. It's not because they're being, not because they're being awkward. It's just their personality. That's the way their brain ticks. So again, with these sort of people, you need to really, really show your competence, and you need to give them plenty of detail and facts. The first two people, the dominant influencers, hate too much detail. I mean, I've done this test, and I'm actually an influencer, a little bit of dominant in me, but it's my main predominant style is influencer. I'm not a devil for detail type of guy. If someone's selling to me and they start getting into all the little nitty gritty, my mind switches off. I want to know, how are you going to help me overall? What's the benefit for me or my family or for my business or whatever it is? Where's the opportunity line? A conscientious type person will want, the devil will be in the detail. So again, a bit like we said yesterday, when you think about these different personality types, introverted versus extroverted, the different personalities in the disc profile, it's useful knowing, because you're not going to completely revamp your selling style, but it can help you, like I said, match and mirror and speak appropriately to those type of people. And when you do that, you're connecting. You're building a relationship. That's selling. Like I always say, selling isn't telling. Selling isn't conning, definitely. Selling is even over persuading. Selling is building a relationship. But building a relationship isn't always about talking to someone for a long time. It's about fitting into their different personality style. Again, before I move on, is there any comments or questions around this? Again, drop it in the chat or unmute.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar, Navin, with James Knight's IMA system, which is very interesting and very similar. I see lots of overlap between DISC and IMA. So IMA has 4 personality colors, red, blue, yellow, and green. And the dominant is very much a red. You know, as you said, we're all a blend of all 4 colors or styles, but one predominates. So dominant would be red, very much the CEO, bold, you know, cut to the chase, cut the crap kind of thing. Yellow is probably more the influencer. Steady is blue, cautious and accepting, and actually interested in relationships more than tasks, whereas the reds and yellows, the reds and greens are more interested in task. The yellows and blues are more relationship oriented. So there's lots of overlap. It's quite interesting.
100%. That sounds very, very similar. But when you start thinking about it, because I mean, having worked, you know, just in a sales role for 15 years, I came across a lot of different people, obviously, and I was having to sell to a lot of people. And when I found out about this, it kind of I almost went backwards and thought, yeah, you know, I remember now. And I remember, like, how come I spoke to somebody and it worked really well with them? And I said the same thing to someone else and they weren't interested. Now, it could be a lot of reasons, but sometimes it's because you've used the wrong or not optimum communication style. It's great to have those other modalities, as you said, Sally. I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm going to move on and quickly go through negotiating, because this is really, really important. And so sometimes people leave money on the table or have the client walk away. So always very obvious, but know what the customer wants. What is it they're looking for ultimately? Know why they're looking to you for that, right? Why have they come to Kay or Scott or Goshi or Sally, whoever it is, or Navin? Why are they specifically talking to you? That's really important to get them to articulate that during the sales process. It's a question I always ask. I always say, out of interest, after we've spoken about their needs and everything else, why have you come to me? What made you come to me? Because I want to know what it is in me that they're kind of expecting, or what they see, or what they like, because this will actually come back when it comes to negotiating with them. Know their timeline for making a decision, right? If somebody has a long timeline, they've got a lot more negotiating power, if you like. So know that. Know when they want to make a decision by and why. Try to deal with a decision maker. This is really true when you go into companies. And I know, Kay, you work with a lot of organizations. I know, and Scott, you just mentioned you work with a lot of law firms. This is really important when you're sometimes talking to a lot of people, but they don't actually make a decision. And I remember I found out the hard way in my sales career, where I actually ended up speaking to someone. I remember it was the drinks company Diageo, and I was selling to their Russia arm, and I was speaking to someone. We were having great conversations for a month. I was telling my sales director, yeah, this is really coming on nicely. And in the end, I found that the lady I was speaking to wasn't a decision maker, and she had spoken to her boss, and he was like, no, we're sticking with our current suppliers. And that really stuck with me. And even now in my business, if I'm selling into corporates, I always make sure that at least if I'm not speaking with the decision maker, it's getting communicated with them, because it will save you a lot of time. And when it comes to negotiating, then you really need to, you want to negotiate with the decision maker if possible. You want to get straight to the source. Oh, and I see Sally, you said Stephanie told you to come to my, or suggested I come to you, you come to my webinar, which is fantastic. Know what your customers' values are. Again, this all comes back to the same thing I've been saying over and over again. This is where the questioning comes in so important. If you know what they value, then when it comes to negotiating, you know what you can be, what's important to them. Right? So it's very important to know that. Know what they care about. Live it same to their, it's different to their values, because what you value and what you care about isn't always the same, but they're very closely related. And know your time scale. How much time have you got to play with this negotiation? And finally, know your walkaway point. If someone's trying to negotiate down a price, you should have a cut-off point where you're not going to do that. You're not going to walk away past that. But negotiation and pricing can be very similar. And what I'll do is I'm actually going to cover the pricing at the same time. Because one of the things I'm a big believer is, generally speaking, I mean, I do it sometimes, but especially for my high value products, do not discount, do not go down price. If you believe in your product and service and you genuinely think that it's going to help people and change and solve their problem, then why are you bringing it down? Like I said, it's not exact science. Sometimes, especially with something that's not my highest value product, I will do that. Or if there's something else that, you know, I'm rewarding someone for, or putting a lot of effort into something, I say, look, as a reward for this, I'm going to give you a little bit of discount off there. But generally speaking, I don't like bringing down the price. Great question, Kay. Are you a decision maker? Fantastic that you asked that early. Has that come, Kay, from being stung once or twice? I thought so. Once you've been stung, you tend to not do it again. And it's a perfectly legitimate question, right? Like, why would you not want to know that? It actually shows that you value your time as well. So just to quickly go on pricing, it's again a mindset. Your pricing is in your mind. People hate putting their prices up, right? They feel awkward about it. But again, if you believe in the value of product and service, and you believe it helps people, especially after you had a conversation with them and you know their needs and you know you can help, there should be no problems with your pricing. Building up the value through the sales process. Throughout the conversation, you should have built up enough value through your questioning, listening, some of the things that we've been speaking about, to not only build up value in why they need your product or service, but the value of you, right? And nowadays, this starts very early. This comes from our social media and our websites and everything. But ultimately, when it comes down to a conversation, that's the most important time to build up your value. And if they built up enough value, then they shouldn't really be looking to discount on pricing. Also, if you are going to raise your prices, especially with existing customers, have a justification around it. But one of the very simple justifications for me as a coach to raise my prices, okay, every year is, well, one, there's inflation, right? And without getting too much into economics, it's currently running at 7%. So if you're not raising your prices by at least 7% a year, you're actually losing money from the year before. That's just simple economics. Second of all, though, especially with something like a coach, right? I'm always developing my skills, always. I'm always learning, reading, developing. So I'm the product. So effectively, I'm enhancing my product every year. So like anything else, an enhanced car, an enhanced iPhone, enhanced anything, the price is going to rise. So especially if even if you've got a product, think about how you develop your product, which is justification for a price rise. And if you've got a service, how have you developed yourself in order to justify that price? Pricing is, just reading this comment. Pricing is always a fence question. For 23 years, I've not put pricing on my website, and now I'm considering it. Go figure. Inflation is not the same as income. I mean, putting prices on your website, that's up to you. I personally I don't do it because what I find is some of the people will read a price, they don't know anything about me, they don't know anything about my business, and also they don't even understand some of their problem well enough. And then they just look at a price as a number. So that's up to you though. Some people are very transparent and put their prices on the website. I don't think there's a right or wrong. That's just up to you. Again, pricing is what I mentioned earlier in the objection handling. If somebody has spoken to you about the value, why they need your product or service, basically what I said a few minutes ago, how it's going to help them, how it's going to help their business, etc., etc. That's when they turn around and have an objection about pricing, you've kind of got your answer. You've just said, you're explaining all this throughout our conversation. Are you really going to try to haggle over a few £100s or a few £1,000s? So I know I'm rushing it now. I'm just aware of timing. Pre-inform them. Another technique or another way of doing it is just, telling people, I'm not the cheapest on the market from just a pure monetary value, but I give value. And I will be putting my prices up every year. If you get, that's why sometimes it's better to be in a 3-year contract with me or a 2-year contract with me, because you're going to be frozen into those prices. But if you come back to me again next year or you want to renew, the prices are going to go up. Just tell them in advance. Don't give them a nasty surprise. The other thing is, rather than discounting, one thing I would say is negotiate on other variables. Okay? That can be more time. You could give them more time. You could give them more value. You could give them an additional product, a side product. But generally, that's what I prefer to do rather than actually bringing my prices down. Because again, I'm leaving money on the table. I'm taking value away from what I do. And again, I'm cheapening my product or service. So generally speaking, when it comes to negotiation pricing, negotiate on other variables. Right? And again, if you know what's important to them, okay, for example, if somebody really, really is looking for someone who's very flexible, again, just making up an example here, you can go, look, I'm not going to bring the pricing down, but we can have a flexible working arrangement where every week you change the coaching time. I'm not saying do that, I'm just giving you an example. But generally speaking, do not, if you can, bring down your prices. Try to negotiate other variables and do increase your prices and have no shame in that, unless you think your product or service is actually getting worse. Just seeing a couple of comments there. Navin, do people bypass your website if you do not have a price on it? Potentially. Again, some things you're not going to appeal to everyone. Some people want to see a price on the website. If they don't see it, they get turned off. I personally believe in the whole value sell. And I believe I'd rather have a conversation with someone, okay, really understand their needs, really explain what I'm about, and then talk about pricing, because I don't want the conversation just to be a price, about a number. I want a conversation to be about a value, and I want to be a conversation about the benefits to them. And I just personally, my personal feeling is, if I stick a price, my price on a website, they're just thinking of it as a number, and they're making a decision without fully knowing all the facts. But again, I don't think there's a right or wrong with that, because some people like putting the pricing up and saying, we're now just talking to people who want to work with us. We're not having our time wasted. That, I would say, there's no right or wrong value, right or wrong answer. What I would encourage you though to do is really, really own your pricing, right? Really, really be comfortable with increasing your pricing. That comes from knowing your value and knowing the benefit that you give to your client. I'm very wary of time. So, and again, last thing on this is try to attract the right customer in the first place. Speaking to one of my clients the other day, and we found that one of their clients is that whole 80-20 thing. Usually your lowest paying clients will give you 80% of your problems. Your price sensitive clients are the ones who try to get squeeze every penny out of you and actually give you the most problems. So sometimes it's choosing the right customer in the first place. Personally, that's why I don't like to work with people who all they care about is the price, because I'm working as a sales coach and I'm like, yes, you have to invest to increase your sales, and this is what's going to give you. If they're going to start penny pinching personally, I just don't want to work with them. That's just my personal choice. You guys decide that in your business, but very, very important to work out who you want and try to focus with them. Because what will happen, you'll start discounting if you deal with people who are just price sensitive, and before you know it, your prices are, you've lost so much value. I was going to go through closing, but I'm looking at the time. So this is something that, again, a very important part of sales. I'm going to have to, just because of time, I'll bring it up on there, but there's different types of closing techniques. This is the sort of thing I really go into a lot of detail actually on my course and when working with me, because closing is, again, up there with one of the 3 most important parts of sales. A lot of people, business owners, you probably had it, will have a lovely conversation with someone. They'll be like, yeah, they're interested, and then they walk away. And they're like, oh, what happened there? And it's because you didn't know how to close or close as effectively. Right? When I learned how to close, because it's a skill that you learn, so also a mindset, but also a skill. When I was working in corporate, my closing ratio, my sales figures went up hugely. Okay, because there is a bit of an art to it. But just going in summary of the entire webinar, work on your mindset. I think that's the first most important thing. If you look at a lot of things I've been saying when it comes to negotiating, pricing, okay, whether it comes to how good you feel about your product and service, it all comes through your mindset. And think about what we did talk about in the first couple of days. I will be sending you all the recordings of the 3 days. Listen to that, go over it, think about your business. Think about why you're in business, what's your values, okay? What are you trying to get out of this? Why you think you're important. Marinate in your own success. Marinate in why you think you're great. Get that mindset super focused, super charged. Customers, very simple, will need to know, trust, and like you to buy from you. And that really comes from building a relationship, which isn't just about talking about the weather, right? Yes, taking people out for drinks and having a social time with them definitely helps, right? But generally, relationships come from questioning and listening. Asking powerful questions, making them think, teaching them something, listening to them like with genuine empathy. Know your buyers, know their style, and try to communicate with them most effectively and appropriately as possible. Raise your prices. I encourage each and every one of you in business, start raising your prices from tomorrow or certainly from next year, because you deserve it. And the more you do that, more easy it becomes. And then close them throughout. One of the things I will talk about something about closing. People think that closing is some big magical sentence you say at the end. Yes, there are some techniques that can help you, but closing is done throughout the sales process. And that's keep checking in with your buyer, your customer. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Keep checking in with them, because you're naturally closing them throughout. So at the end, when you do try to say, look, this is my price, this is what I do, if they turn around and they go, oh, we're not interested, you kind of say, well, right throughout, you told me, yes, you were here, and yes, you were here, and yes, you were here. Don't quite understand where the loss of interest has come from. But guys, I know I really had to rush through that. I'm going to check if there's any comments, perhaps to understand your client and how to resonate with them, content over time, building trust, giving value, educating. Yes, all of that, very true. You always need to, it's about understanding your client. It's about that resonating with them and giving value. And over time, it certainly helps. Guys, is there any final questions or comments? Okay, well, look, appreciate the 3 days you spent with me. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Like I said, I've had to do a really whistle-stop tour, and I've had to just sort of rush through it a lot. But my objective for this webinar was just to get you to think differently. In a 3-hour webinar, I'm not going to be able to give you all the sales skills and mindset to make you an optimal salesperson, optimal business person. But what it can do is just make you think about things slightly differently. And guys, what I'm going to do is, as you guys showed up, that you showed that you're serious about developing your businesses, I actually have my course, which goes into what we've covered, but in 10 times more detail. It's on the 31st of Jan, 1st and 2nd of February, which is a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And it's from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. That's the link. But if you go to my website and you look at course, you can see it there. Now, it's £159.99. Like I said, there's 9 hours packed full of value. We're going to take what we did today and we're going to unpack that. We're going to take it to another level. And there's 1 or 2 other things that I couldn't have time to cover today that we're going to include in that. What my offer is as well, because I always like to give an offer, okay? Because you guys showed up, because you guys are serious about changing your businesses and changing your sales, the first 6 people that sign up from this group by Sunday, right, I'm going to give a complimentary laser sales coaching session to, which is basically a 45-minute session, okay, where I'm going to be looking at, we're going to be talking about your sales for your business. We're going to take a quick overview of it and just maybe some little things that you can tweak. Any other questions that you might have personal to your business. That's about £100 worth of value just there, over £100. It's effectively like me giving you a £100 voucher to spend. So, like I said, the first 6 signups, they'll get that. Otherwise, in your own leisure, do sign up to it, but it's going to be packed full of value and it's going to take you to that next level when it comes to sales. Also, if you want to inquire and know more about actually coaching program with me, I do offer them as well. But look, main thing is I hope you've got a lot of value out of this. I really hope it's made you think a lot about this and about how you're currently selling and maybe how you can tweak it, because you're all doing fantastically well. You've all got businesses. This is just about tweaking it to make you even better. And sometimes just a 10% tweak can make a 100% difference. I will be sending you emails with questionnaires. So it'd be great if you could cover the questionnaire, fill in the questionnaire. I'll give you the recordings of the webinar. And if you have any other questions or anything, I'm always available. But thank you for your time. I look forward to working with you more. Take care, guys.